Steve. I have no idea why on this thing they have to print this stuff in pink. It's like, can't read it. Matt, you're here. Lauren's here. Jericho's here. You said Mr. Markham would be here.
I did not. I said he sits there. That is exactly what I said. I said he sits there.
He's probably lonely for Lawrence County and had to head home. Mason, Travis is here. Wes, yep. And last dog and Tom. Okay. What were we doing last? Anybody remember?
Problem extra 11:28.
11:28. We need to finish that up, right? Unless all y'all know it right on. Next time. 11:28. Okay. Now. Now again, from this, we had what formulas. Of course, I took the wrong one. Administration, we have what, 120,000 plus, well, I guess we should say S1 if we want to keep it. And plus 0.1 of S2. And S2, we said was what, 312,500? Plus 0.4 of S1. Now, which one of these we want to solve for? Does it matter to any of you? I think we did this other day, did we not? S2 real quick, I'll copy this real quick so we can head on in. 500 plus 0.4 of 120 plus 0.1 S2. And we come down, we get 0.96 S2 equals 360,500. S2 equals 375, 521. And when you plug that back into this S1 formula, we're going to get S1 equals 157, 552. The 120 plus 10% of 375, 521. We okay there?
You want us to round like these two?
Round to the dollar. Yeah. Now, at that point, what we need to do then is we got to go in and allocate these numbers all across the board. And again, just do this rather quickly. We got what administrative. What factory support. I can't read this thing. I'm writing here. And we got what, 3? And finishing. Now, administration was 120, right? And 312,500. Now, allocate administration. How are we going to do that? How much are we going to allocate in administration? Does anybody know? We've actually already calculated it. That's the amount we calculate. Once we get those amounts from the formulas, that's what we're gonna allocate. And how do we allocate it? Well, you're gonna go in and we're gonna use the percentages given to us in the book. 40% factory support, 30 fabrication, 20 and 10. Everybody okay? And so all I'm doing is going down through here and round these to the 40% would be 6321, 47,266, 31,510, and 15,755. Again, just the percentages listed in the book times the 157,552. Now the reason we have to do that, remember, is here when we do factory support, when we allocate it, how much are we going to allocate there? Well, we've got to allocate 375,521. You say, why so? Remember, down here I got to come up with 0, and these two add together are going to be 0, right? Now, again, you go back to your percentages in the book, and it says that we're going to allocate 10% to administrative, 20 to fabrication, 15 to assembly, and 55 to finishing. And right off the bat, I bet this has to be 37,552, right? Because when I do that, again, I got to come up with 0 here. So, and you're going to get some rounding things, so you just got to be careful. You know you got to come up with 0 in your service departments. Okay? Now, the other multiplications, just to go through there, 75, 104, and 56, 328, and 206, 537. And you also have to put in your direct cost to the departments. And you got what? 390, 67,000, and 59.5. And when we add those up, and that is your total cost. You okay? What we're doing there? Now that's reciprocal. Now, I do want to show you something. One way how we can use the reciprocal, by the way. And well, yeah, I do want to look at this. And again, these things are on Blackboard, so you can review them on your own, examples and things. If we can get on, well, that's vector income. That is the examples, and I'm not going through them. We've looked at the direct method, the step method. And by the way, the step method will give you different answers depending on which department you start with, obviously. Okay. And then the reciprocal, but just notice here, and these are from what's on the PowerPoints, but just notice, you do get different numbers with which method you use. And by the way, we will have to disclose our methodology here, but that's true of GAAP, right? When you get different numbers, we use straight line, or if you use units of production in depreciation, all that, FIFO, LIFO. Yeah, it's just the way it is. So it will depend. Now, most feel that reciprocal gives you the best picture, most accurate picture. But a lot of people don't want to go, it is the most complicated. God love us in this country, we know we don't like algebra. And so, you know, that's what, but notice though, the total cost allocated will always be the amount incurred in the service department, so that we're trying to allocate. So you can't allocate more than, it's like you can't depreciate more than cost. So, you know, you take 6 of one, half a dozen other, whatever, bottom line still comes out total costs the same. Now, we can use the reciprocal method for decision making. And one of the ways that we use it in decision making is outsourcing. What we're going. Now, the thing about it is, when we go to outsource something, meaning we're going to let somebody provide the service to us, we'll pay for it, and this is real big right now. A lot of companies are doing this. We know that. And accounting work, payroll. I hear commercials on TV. Let us do your payroll. Why worry about it? We'll handle it for you. And so a lot of services, computer work and all that, maintenance, janitorial services, outsourced. And you say, well, you got, we do look at bottom line cost figures. We know that cost and quality, and you got, but you do have qualitative issues when making these decisions too. You have to see if it's close. If the cost factor is close, qualitative will rule. But if it's one way is way cheaper than another, obviously cost will dominate. Generally, I'm not saying all, but generally. But again, say that the variable cost, and what we look at, what's our cost? Variable cost, which we typically believe that we eliminate it, we get rid of all variable costs, plus avoidable fixed cost. Is there any of the fixed costs we can get rid of? And if it's all unavoidable, then obviously that doesn't render it our decision at all. Unavoidable fixed cost, that's one of those sunk costs. It doesn't come into decision making at all. And so we've got 200,000 out of 800, so fixed is 600,000. Same thing here. Administrative is 3.5 million out of 5 million, so 1.5 million is the fixed. And again, we're going to go in and substitute, do some analysis here with that reciprocal. Our variable cost is the direct variable cost to that department plus a percentage of the other service department. Because again, if we eliminate, we got to look at not only what the variable cost of that department is, but also the relationship to the other service department. And again, we go through and do your calculations there. And we get what, 3.6 and that ain't right. S2 is 4 million, excuse me, I know. So, and and by the way, what we're trying to do here, obviously what we're trying to show you is that we do use this information to help managers make decisions. And again, outsourcing is one of all of the things. Now, obviously, the price the outside vendors bring you, you're comparing to what costs can be eliminated. And like I say, if we go ahead and finish the equations, we get what, 4 million and 1 million is our cost. So the total variable cost information systems, when you do consider the use of administration by the information systems, is $1 million. And to that, we would add any avoidable fixed cost if there were any. They didn't tell us any here. But again, if we were considering a bid from someone on this right there, that somebody to provide information services, outsource it, we would use the $1 million figure in consideration of that. Now, if there are no, and by the way, if there is no interactions between service departments, it is just your variable expense plus any avoidable fixed overhead is what you would compare for the outsourcing. Now, just to show you this, look at exercise 50. I think that's the one. There's too many papers up here. But one I looked at, one that said, that's good to look at. What I did with that. I'll look through look in the right place. Yeah. 50. Now, notice here in bottom page 429. Huh?
I'm there.
Okay. Refer to facts in 42, but they estimate the structure of operations is as follows. And we've got the administration, accounting, and east and west. Now, if they outsource the administrative department, what is the maximum they can pay an outside vendor without increasing total cost? How would we figure that out? Any ideas? Not quite. What we gotta do? Any ideas?
If you're gonna outsource it, when you have to figure out how much it's actually costing you, that way you can figure out how much you can pay them.
Okay, we need to figure out what's the total variable cost, plus any avoidable overhead, fixed costs. Overhead fixed costs. So how do we find out that total variable cost? How do we do it for administration? They didn't give us percentages. What are we gonna do?
Have to find them somehow.
Huh?
We'll have to find them
How are we gonna do that? Yeah, you know, it's like a puzzle. You gotta figure out what they're telling you, not telling you. This author does a good job making you have to think a little bit. What would we do? What's problem say do?
Probably 1142.
Yeah, let's go back and look at 42. That's a good idea. And notice we got two service departments, administrative and accounting, two operating departments, east and west. And it says the costs are allocated on the basis of, administrative costs are allocated on the basis of employees. So, can somebody now give me the formula for the administrative department, the equation? I mean, we'll say that, let's say S1's administration. Is that accounting? How do we come up with this point? Again, this is, like I say, this is where people get, a lot of times get stuck. When it's coming up with the equation, they'll get them crossed. Well, administration, what's the direct cost? Huh? Now we're using the cost from column 50.
Is that still systems?
Now, we only want the variable cost, don't we? 25,000. Remember here, now remember, we're using this for deciding do we outsource or not.
But don't we also include the avoidable fixed?
Not yet. We gotta find out, how much is the variable cost first. So, we're gonna have 25,000. What is it for accounting? I mean, is it extra 50? 6,000, right? Now, we know we gotta add something to it. We got something of S2 and S1 here, right? But what percentage, how are we gonna come up with that? That's where you gotta go back to 42. And that's what you're gonna be using there. Administration gets S2 allocated to it, right? How do they allocate accounting?
Number of transactions?
Okay, so what percentage of transactions does administration have?
50%.
And what percentage, how do we allocate the other one? Number of employees? How much do we, what percentage do we apply there on accounting? 25%, right? Now, we can solve this, right? Y'all got calculators, tell me what it is. 32,000 for what? S1? And S2 you said was 14? 14,000. Okay. Now, what that represents is the variable cost. You know, the variable cost of S1 is just not 25,000. We actually have to bear some of that cost, 50% of the accounting that we would be able to do away with if we outsourced. And same thing with accounting, it's 14,000. Now, to that we do have to bring in that avoidable fixed cost, and that's listed, it's given to us, right? It's 10 and 3. So if we want, so in decision making, if we're looking at this, the avoidable cost, if we outsource administrative, would be how much? $42,000, guys. 32 plus 10. And if we want to outsource accounting, it would be how much? 17,000. Is what we're trying to do. Okay. C asked us, if we outsource both, what's the maximum we would pay an outside vendor without increasing total cost? Yeah, if we're just going to outsource administrative, it'd be 42,000, 32 plus a 10. If we're just going to outsource accounting, it's going to be 17,000. What if we outsource both of them? How much would it be? Huh?
59,000.
59,000? Trick to it. 44,000. Why, Don?
Because you would have to call for gallon.
Yeah, you're double accounting if you use this 42. I guess what you did was Mason, 42 and 17 is 59, but you're double accounting. Actually, if we're going to outsource both of them, we've got what? Fixed, or excuse me, variable cost, direct variable cost of 31,000 between the two, plus avoidable fixed cost of 13, you would only be willing to discuss a price up to 44,000. The difference in that 44 and 59 is the double counting. You're counting those costs twice. Does that make sense? So you gotta be careful on that. And companies do make the mistake of counting costs twice. They do sometimes fail to record costs. So that's unfortunately not a unique situation by any stage of the imagination. You know, it's like right now, you know, y'all know that I like history. I decided, bought a bunch of books at the Lexington Library, had to sell last fall. And went the last day and they handed you a paper bag and said fill it up, all the books you can put in, it's $2. So I bought all kinds of history books and got a sack full of stuff. Plus Christmas, everybody gives me books. So I got 20 million books and no time to read it. But I bought a copy of The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. It's like a 1,500-page book. And that's not counting notes to it. Now, I'm about to turn my way through it. I'm almost to page 1,000 now. But it's interesting how people read about how the German high command, Hitler and all that, they're talking about economic resources. And they just say, they kept saying, the United States, they're nothing, they can't do anything, all that. And they just totally discounted that we could produce military equipment. And, you know, of course, if you know your history, we were called the arsenal of democracy because we made 20 million planes and tanks and everything else. But again, the viewpoint was they sort of underestimated us a little bit of what we could do economically. So companies, leaders, and all kinds of situations. And you think, well, how could they be that wrong? Well, up to that point, we really had never done it. So, and like I say, I remember, and you say, well, let's get off of war and things like that. I remember in 1978, Ashland Oil, big company in our area, or at least my neck of the woods up there, the Marathon now owns, basically. I remember their chief economist encouraged them. They signed a huge contract with the Shah of Iran for oil for the next 25 years, which means their contract would just be almost getting ready to be up. If you know your history, in 1979, the Shah got deposed within 6 months of them signing the contract. So not everybody has a good crystal ball. Okay, now everybody okay with reciprocal and different ways you can use it? Now let's get on to our other half of the chapter, and that's joint cost. Allocating joint cost. And again, I hope that we're not having too much trouble here because it is a little bit logical, and mathematics are not that difficult. But again, you know, why do we allocate joint cost? Anybody? Why do we? Got to give the accountant something to do to calculate, keep them busy. What's some practical reasons why we do it? I may think of a simple common sense reason. Well, what is a joint cost? What do you mean by that? You awake on this? Okay, just check. Just check. What are joint costs? Mason?
It is a
Oh,
cost.
come on, you don't gotta read that out of the book, do you? Y'all never heard of joint costs before? Never? Ever? I thought surely somewhere in the county you've come across this before. No? Guys, it's when you have, it could be materials, labor, overhead, anything. It's the costs that are all uniform till you get what we call a split off point. We can't identify different products yet. You say, what do you mean? Well, let's go back to the oil industry. Crude oil, they buy a barrel of crude oil. What do we get out of crude oil? Now, come on, I know you got to know that. What's the things we get out? Gas, gasoline, what else? Excuse me. Kerosene, diesel fuel, jet fuel, all kinds of chemicals. So we have more than one product coming out of that. Well, did you pay proportionate for gas, diesel, jet fuel, all that? No, you paid one price for the barrel, right? How do we know what the value of the different inventory we got? You know, what's this gasoline? What's the cost of this gasoline? What's the cost of that diesel? Well, you got to take that price of that barrel of oil and divide it up somehow, don't you? So again, when we talk about joint costs, they're all costs that we've incurred up to what we call the split-off point. You say, what's split-off? When we can identify the different products then. Up to that point, it's a barrel of crude oil. And you say, well, what else? You can do like milk, processing the milk. Well, what else do you get out of milk? Anybody know?
Cheese.
You get cheese, you get ice cream, all kinds of things, right? And yeah, I went to Wisconsin a few years ago. Got to see how they make cheese curds. They're good, but not something you really want to handle. So you take a lot of products. Take cattle, steaks, hamburger, roast, all the different products come out of that. Now, and so we got to split. We have joint products, and we got joint products, byproducts, and scrap. What distinguish? How do you know which is what? How do we distinguish between them, by the way? What's the difference between a byproduct and a joint product? Between scrap and a joint product?
Joint product is your main product, isn't it?
Well, what makes it a joint product? Real simple, guys. Economic value. So in other words, if you can make scrap to a byproduct, it's got some value to it, that's good. If you can take scrap or byproduct and make it a joint product, you're going great guns. You say, what do you mean? Is that ever happen? Sure, all the time. You know, they're always doing R&D, trying to figure out how, this is what we got left over. Is there anything we can do with it? Classic example, true story. This happened not far from us, up in Charleston, West Virginia, years ago. Guys walking across the bridge, and he noticed the Kanawha River was froze over. But down river, it was flowing freely. You're like, what's the difference? Well, if you know what's up around Charleston, all over the place up there. Anybody ever been to Charleston, West Virginia? Well, you're fortunate, but any West Virginians in this class, right? And don't, before if anybody sees this gets offended, I'm actually related. I'm a descendant of the first lieutenant governor of the state. I got relatives all over, so, and in-laws too. My wife's family's out there. But if you've never been up Charleston, West Virginia area, it's a chemical city. I mean, there are chemical factories all up down that valley. And Union Carbide plant there. And the water was flowing freely by the Union Carbide plant. And what they were doing, they were taking a scrap product, and this was before all the environmental laws. They were dumping it in the river. And that guy got thinking, you know what? That would be nice to put in my car so I wouldn't have to drain the radiator every night. So you got antifreeze, guys. So just think about that. Your relatives, if they lived in Ohio Valley, below the Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where the Kanawha River flows into it, guess what they were drinking? Yeah. But that's a true story. That's how they, and so companies are always trying. Power companies right now, they're trying to find out what to do with fly ash. If they can do something about it. They've tried to make cinder blocks out of it. You say, what's fly ash? that's the residue. You pulverize coal to burn, to make electricity. Well, that pulverized coal has ash. It's called fly ash. And they basically pump it. If you go by a power plant, you'll see a pond where a coal burning power plant. They pump the fly ash out, they mix it with water, pump it out. It dries, and so when it gets full, they shovel it out. Take a backhoe and start putting the car, they truck it in the hollow somewhere and dump it. Well, they're trying to find out some use for it. Only good use I've ever found for fly ash, the reason I work summers as down at the power plant. My dad, my family's a power plant. If you ever build a house, if you can get some sprinkle on your foundation, you probably want to. Those bugs will not walk through it. We used to put it down in front of beetles and all that, and they walk right up to it and turn around. And we got those, it's like walking on razor blades to them. I mean, you can put your hand, feel it, cut it. But to the bugs, they don't like it. So that's the only good purpose I've ever found for it. But again, if they can find something for it, think what you did. Instead of having to pay to haul it out and all that, all of a sudden you can start selling something. Even if you make it to a byproduct where you're only getting some money out of it. So it's very important to try to do things like that. Try to use everything we can. Now, what we're going to look at here too is just how do we allocate, why do we? Well, it might be nice to know, we got all these costs, might not, what's the value of our inventory, and hence what's cost of goods sold when we do sell it. And again, joint costs are anything before the split-off point. Now, once the split-off point's reached, you don't have joint costs. Why? Because we can identify the products individually, and any costs there, those are called separate costs. They attach themselves to that product. And it's just what you've been doing since 281 with those costs. No big difference. And again, just an illustration there. Now, one of the ways we do this is allocate with net realizable value method and the physical quantities method. Now, if net realizable value method, basically what we're doing here is we're just going to simple allocation. If there's no further cost to process them, net realizable value is essentially sales value if there's no further processing cost. So you got 300 plus 450, a total of 750, right? And so you got 300 over 750 times the 270 for high grade, 450 over 750 times 270 for the cost we would apply to the low grade. And again, why do you allocate it? Again, inventory, it's executive performance. Obviously, we may have some different people over different products and all that in product lines. And you say physical quantities. Well, we could go back and do it. Now, like with coal and with oil and all that, a lot of times what they do is BTUs. Anybody know what a BTU is? No scientists here? British Thermal Unit. It's a way of measuring content, heat content. And so, like with coal, how many BTUs that coal has, they can allocate it back in. That would be more like high quality, low quality too. Higher BTU. That's a very common way of doing physical quantity. Now, again, if there is no further processing cost, it's basically just the sales value at split off point. If there is, and again, if there is a market for it, if you've got a market for that, a lot of times split off, no, you don't. You do have to process it further. Now, estimated net realizable value is the term he likes to use. I'll tell you, a lot of books term this differently. This is, when you're doing this, they would simply call this sales value. Then they would call this method just net realizable value. Net meaning we subtract out what's the net amount we will get? Final sales price minus any separate processing cost. And you add that up and allocate based on those totals. Now this guy wants to make a difference. He calls NRV, sales value, estimated NRV is what when we subtract out the separate processing costs. You say, well, how do we know which one to use? Usually if they're going to tell you there's further processing costs, we're going down to the estimated net realizable value. That's one little tip. But again, notice here, like I said, mathematics, this is not really a really hard, profound thing to do. You simply, on sales value here, we got 750, 300 over 750, 40%. By deductive logic now, I don't even have to calculate the other one, right? I can say it's 60%. And then 270 times 60%, 162, 40%, I just subtract it to get the one away. Has to be. Again, all that 270,000 joint costs has to be allocated between the two. Now, notice there we just had two joint products. Now, if we did have some further processing cost, well, no, he's just showing you. Notice when we do percentage of sales, or excuse me, sales method, net realizable value method, this guy calls it. Notice how our gross margin as a percentage of sales is pretty much constant. And it's just, obviously, if we were applying it that way, it would, mathematically. Now, notice what he's changed here. There is no further processing cost up here. Down here, we do have 550 for a sales value of 500. So net realizable value here would be 500, 550 minus the 50. Now, when we do this process, those are the numbers. Notice here, we still use the 300 for the hybrid, even though they don't have any, 300 minus 0 is still 300. But again, you got 800, then you're going to allocate it 300 over 8, 3/8, 5/8. That's how we're allocating that 270,000 now. Again, not that radical difference. And the physical method, quantity, again, can be weight, volume, any other physical measurement. And oftentimes it's used, as it says there, when the prices are volatile, they're flipping all over the chart, you don't have a nice steady price. Maybe that, or it can be that there's a lot more processing to do between the split off point and when we can first market it. That, joint costs may not be all that great, so we'll just, you got all this other stuff going on. And it may be that, hey, we don't have any sales value at that point. And so all we got is volume, weight to allocate that. And again, notice here, we're doing 1/3, 2/3. We're just tons of coal. Again, at 270, 1/3 of it's 90, 2/3 is 180. And you still have to, again, subtract that from your sales value and get your gross margin. Now, I keep wanting to get I've got it. Do you sell it now or process it further? Come on, guys. The change in revenue compared to the change in expense. If revenue is greater, process it further. If it ain't, sell it now. I mean, how hard is that to figure out? If I can sell something now for $5 and I can process it further for $3 more and I can sell it for $7, why would I do that? You're only going to make $4 when I can sell it right now for $5. That doesn't make sense. And so that obviously, change in revenue compared to the change in expense. If the increase in revenue is greater than the increased expenses to process it further, do it. Even if it's a penny, you're better off, you're 1 penny better, right? Now you might have qualitative issues at that close to it that would change your mind, but also too, there are other qualitative issues. It may be, your marketing class, hopefully I'll talk about some things like chips and dip syndrome. They may be complementary products. And, okay, we might lose money by processing it further, but if we do, it also increases the sales of our other product. So overall, you're better off taking a hit on that one. You have to use the holes there. So you have to think things like that, other qualitative issues. Like here, we can sell right now for $450, but if we're willing to spend 50,000, we can sell it for 550. Well, you've got a change in revenue of 100,000, so I think most people would say, yeah, I'm willing to spend 50,000 if I'm going to get 100,000 back. Right? I mean, to me, this is good old common sense. That's why I really like managerial cost accounting, because it is, unlike economics, it has some common sense there. Now, byproducts. And by the way, scrap, same thing too here. Again, notice the difference between a byproduct and a joint product is simply value, economic value. And if we can elevate a byproduct to a joint product status, we're that much further ahead in the game. And that's why companies are. That's why R&D with oil companies are always trying to find out different chemicals and things, what they can do with it. Make all of a sudden we got this stuff still trying to have to bury it somewhere in EPA issues. All of a sudden we want it. And guess what? Gasoline used to be a byproduct. Y'all realize that? I mean, they've been making. We've been drilling oil. What, one of the big first oil strikes was in Pennsylvania. It was 1859. Well, there wasn't no Mercedes running around then. And so what it was, what were they wanting out of oil back then, by the way? Let's give you a little history lesson. Why did they had refineries, they distillated, cracked the crude oil. What were they cracking it for?
Kerosene?
Huh?
Was it kerosene?
Kerosene lamps. You need kerosene for kerosene lamps. Yeah, heating oil like that. By the way, you know what they did with the gasoline? Poured it in rivers. Why? Too explosive. It was dangerous. And that wasn't for, I mean, you're talking mid-19th century, what, the automobile comes in, turn of the century, so you're talking a few decades there. And, they had to get rid of it because it was dangerous. There wasn't nothing you could do with it until somebody came up and made that internal combustion engine where you could control that power, that energy. So, like I say, you wonder why some people are crazy. Probably ancestors drank gasoline and carrot and antifreeze. No wonder, right? But that's true. Used to dump it out on the ground and get rid of it. Couldn't use it. You didn't want any quantities of it around. I always, like I say, I watch war pictures and all that, symbolizing, and you think of all the gasoline, they're always blowing these huge tanks of gasoline, crude oil up, these railroad tankers are blowing up. And you think, my gosh, if we just had a fraction of that back, just think how cheap gas would be, these days. I'm talking about a shortage, we'd be swimming in it. Yeah. About like steel, how many stuff's been blown up over the years of steel, metals that we've used and wasted. Anyway, but how do we account for byproducts? Well, real easy. One of the ways is relative sales value. Whatever we get for it, we just simply reduce the amount of joint costs that we're allocating. Again, if we sell it for say we had joint cost of $270 in this example here. Let's say we got a byproduct we sell for $20,000. Well, then I'm only going to allocate $250,000 to the joint products. So whatever I get out of the economic value of the byproduct is zero. Whatever my cost is what my relative sales value. I'm just equal them out. Now the other one is just you go ahead and you allocate all the costs, and then when you actually sell the byproduct, you treat it as other revenue. And I've seen both ways. They're both quite common. How to do it. And just to show you the example there. I think somebody ask me, or maybe it was online, somebody questioned me. I think it was an online class. They were going, well, why did it? And why didn't we allocate anything to the byproduct? Well, notice here, the sales value here is 15,000. Notice what we're doing. We still get our 40-60% between the joint products. We don't consider the byproduct in that. Now, getting a percentage. But notice now we're only going to allocate 255,000 of that joint cost. In essence, we're allocating 15,000 to the dust, coal dust here, that we can sell it for. And again, how do we know it's a byproduct? Look at the sales value, 300, 450, 15. It's all relative. It's all relative. And scrap is even down below. Sometimes scrap can be a negative number, right? We don't pay for it. Like steel mill, we have what we call slag coming off a blast furnace, and what they do, they sell it, and the company gets it and make gravel out of it. Make gravel and use it to make the cement, things like that. But again, compared to the cost of steel, very minor. Very minor. Okay. Now again, notice here, on this one, we still just, we got gross margin of 15,000, that's other revenue. We still apply the 270 directly to the other two. And that's where we're going to byproduct. Okay? Questions? We're good? Assignments are due next Wednesday, so hopefully if you got questions, we'll finish this chapter.
Don't we have a quiz due tonight?
I think you do. Yeah, tonight. And yeah, you do have 2 shots at it. Again, the purpose is not to nail you, the purpose is to make you learn. Okay? Have a good week. You can get a long, first weekend of school, you get a long weekend. And a boy. We need more of that.